My record, though, is 16 times. I was in like middle school, and
It's like a superpower.
The Jetsons got some things right, other things wrong.
The Jetsons is a view of the future from 1962.
The Jetsons were incredibly stylized.
the Jetsons were one push button away from anything you want.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Falling Towers, Watch the First podcast, the podcast in which we watch the first episode of a series so that you don't have to.
But you still can.
Yep. Today, we are doing, you may have guessed, The Jetsons. Episode 1, of course, the pilot episode entitled Rosie the Robot, or as Jane called her, Robot. If you'd like us to review a show, this is Sci-Fi Month, everybody. So if you have a sci-fi show you'd like us to review, in the comments below, type WTF, that stands for Watch the First, of course, WTF, the show, and where we could see it. So in this case, you would have said WTF, The Jetsons on Max, or wherever you
Or
may.
TV.
Yep, that's right. And then if you make those suggestions in the comments below, we will review that show. Maybe. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate it. Everybody, we have a Mars scientist here. It's Abigail Fraeman, Dr. Abigail Fraeman, I should say.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you all.
We're excited to have you.
We are very excited. You may have seen her before during Virtual TrekCon 3. Tons of fun. So happy to have you here, Dr. Abigail Fraeman. Look, Kelly Park, actress out in the Midwest. What's up?
Woo, just freezing a little bit. Pretty cold winter. So yeah, not too bad. Just hunkering down and doing the Midwest dream.
Good to see you.
And Dr. Mohammed
Thanks for
Noor
having
is
me.
here with the East Coast dream, right?
There we go. Yay, East Coast. Always a pleasure to be on Falling Towers. Watch the first of things.
And my name is Ryan T. Husk. I'm wearing a cool Riza and Chill shirt where Picard is showing some thigh. And you can tell this part's
my.
green. I like to show some thigh, Mr. Number. Okay.
It's the number.
Let's get into this one, everybody. This is super exciting. But Mohammed, I don't know where to go. I need a roadmap.
Oh, I think we're in a predicament then. Meaning, this is the part of the show where we each predict what each other thought of the show without revealing whether we liked it ourselves or not.
Oh my goodness, this is my favorite part. It's so freaking fun. Mohammed and I have known each other pretty well for a few years, so we could pretty much guess what the other person thought. Abigail, well, we had you on a panel once 2 years ago, so it's going to be kind of a toughie with you. Kelly, I've known you for like 10 years, and what a 10 years. Dr. Noor and you have known each other off and on this show quite a few times. Kelly and Abigail, all you know between each other is the story we said about the cafe before we hit record.
This is true.
So good luck. Mohammed, I'm going to predict first. I predict that you've watched this show before. You've enjoyed it in the past. I feel like today you're a little more critical of it because you're like, well, now let me get my clipboard. And really, before I was just enjoying it with my banana cereal, but now it's serious time. So I think overall, I think you enjoyed it, but not a ton. You were like Raisin Bran, but like, you know, the crunchy one that's not as good. That's how you felt about it. Dr. Abigail Fraeman, I predict that you were medium on this. I think you liked it as a child, but I think through today's lens and through your scientific mind, you were like, but you were happy about some of the things they got right. You're like, that's pretty good. Kelly, I think you giggled a lot and you enjoyed this, but there were some aspects you didn't like. So I think, I think everybody's going to be lukewarm to, medium, like around the 6-ish to 7-ish range. Those are my predictions.
This was a tough one. I do think similarly. I don't think anybody here is going to be like, that was the worst thing I ever saw. I don't think anybody's going to be like trashing it.
But
But yeah, there's a but there. But I do think, let me see. I think Ryan, if I had to guess which among the three of you might like it the most, I'm going to go with the outlier perspective. I might guess you, Ryan. And for Abigail and for Kelly, I think y'all both liked it, but not quite maybe the same level as Ryan. I think you're gonna be like one's notch below. But again, similar range to what Ryan said. I think that, what did you say, 6 to 7? Is that what the range you said? Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to that. But I think Ryan, you might be the higher end of that. So if I had to guess who on the poll that may be appearing right now, if I had to guess, I might guess that Ryan, you might put the high score.
All right. What do you think, Dr. Abigail Fraeman?
Oh, gosh, full name. I love that. Let's see. Not knowing you all very well, I'm just going to go and say, Ryan, I think you're projecting when you say you think we all liked it 6 to 7. I'm going to say that's actually your rating. So that's going to be my guess for what you feel. And let's see, Mohammed, you seem really excited. I don't know if you're just excited for the podcast, which would be great, or you just love this show so much. You can't wait to talk about it. So I'm going to go with the latter, and I'm going to say you are all in. You love this. This show was a formative part for your life, and I'm going to go with like 8 or 9. Like, you're all in. We'll see. And then, gosh, Kelly, just for variety, let's go the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm going to say you hated it. There are things that you couldn't stand. So you're like a 3 or a 4.
You notice how Abigail does this like a scientist? She wants to try a high, a medium, and a low so that she covers the whole spectrum. and then now we're going to test
one of them's
out.
going to be right. Maybe we'll see.
What do you think, Kelly?
Well, by the way, of all the podcasts I've done, I love that bold direction. Cause I usually am always like, oh, wishy-washy. Like, I bet you're like a, whatever in the middle. You're right. I'm going Abigail style. So Ryan, you hated it. Okay, you didn't hate it. But like, I think you watched it as a child, and I think you disliked it. Or you might have liked it back then with your banana oats, whatever you said, Honey Nut Cheerios. And but now you're just like, I don't know. And then Mohammed, I'm thinking that you did like it. I think that you're like, hey, I remember watching this when I was younger. Yeah, there's a few critiques as an adult, but I really liked it. And then Abigail, I'm thinking no. I've known you all for a couple of minutes, but if I'm gonna throw that Hail Mary, I'm just gonna go that it was interesting for you to watch. You might have even remembered it when you were younger, but not really. But I'm gonna say that Ryan didn't like it at all. Abigail was like, not really. And Mohammed's like, I really liked it. I'm going for it.
This is fun, you guys. See, now you know why it's my favorite segment in the show. It's so much fun. Everybody at home, it is now your turn to have fun, finally, right? In the live chat or in the comments below, make your predictions. Do you think I like this show? Think Dr. Noor did? What about Dr. Fraeman? What about Kelly Ann Park? You think we liked it? You think we didn't? State your case. Take your time. Type it out. No rush. Dr. Noor is going to buy us all a little bit of time by telling us what this show is even about.
Do my best. The Jetson family live in a fancy futuristic house on a tall pedestal. Jane is tired from having to push buttons for chores, but even more frustrated that her foodoraka cycle is broken and making food incorrectly. George says they can't afford a new one, so Jane explores instead the idea of getting a robot maid, free for a day. At work, George's boss invites himself to George's house for a free home-cooked meal, which has George panicked since they only have leftovers. Fortunately, the robot maid makes a super impressive meal for everyone. After George's boss is rude, though, the maid dumps a cake on his head and George gets fired. But after tasting the cake, George's boss rehires him with a raise and the family gets to keep the robot maid. You're muted.
Oh,
I said I'm going to make a. No, I
sneeze.
was muted too. That was good that you were muted, Kelly.
I was sneezing and I sneeze in 8s, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really happening right now.
An 8?
Okay.
That's a very interesting number for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've
It
heard
runs
of
in our
2s and
family.
3s, but 8. How
Mhm.
many have you done so far?
That one was only, well, the more nervous I am, the less I'll have. So
Oh,
that one was only like 4 because I was like, really? Really, it's
A half
happening right
sneeze.
now? My record, though, is 16 times. I was in like middle school,
It's
and
like a superpower. That's
it
really impressive.
is.
my
It's the
dad does it
snooter
too.
power.
And then my 2-year-old does it now. And then we're all like,
Wow.
what? So
We totally have to figure out the genetic basis of this trait.
It's adorable.
Max.
Yeah, there are some genetic things. Like I've got that photo
Oh,
something or other that makes you.
the sun sneeze thing.
Yeah, when you're out in the sun or bright lights, it makes you sneeze. And I just always thought that there was like dusty lights or something, but it's actually a genetic thing that I have. And a lot of people have. So maybe it's that, Kelly. Anyway,
Wow.
Abigail right now is like, I thought we were going to talk about a cartoon. What the hell's going on here?
Genetics took over.
I'm like, was there sneezing in the show that I don't remember? I don't think so. They don't sneeze in the future, I think.
No, there's a button
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, to sneeze for you, definitely.
I also want to predict that Dr. Noor, you were really good at book reports when you were a kid, because you always come up with a really good summary of these episodes that I would never be able to do. But clearly you are a book reporter. All right.
Well, thank you.
Well, where do we go next? We've been so sidetracked, Dr. Noor. I think you might have an idea what's next, right?
I might have an idea what's next. This is my favorite part of the show. This is what we like to call Expectation, where we spend a little bit of time on what you expected before you watch the show, though again, without giving away whether we liked it or not. And a lot more time on what we actually get you and you actually watch the show. Sorry, Kelly. I didn't mean to hit you.
Sorry, I was
You're dodging.
yeah.
Or as Brian
right.
likes to say, we like to compare and contrast what we expected with what we actually got.
I do love to say it, but now you say it even better than I do. So that's cool. Here we go. Dr. Noor, start us off. Before you watched this first episode of the Jetsons entitled Rosie the Robot, what did you expect, if anything?
So I had watched the Jetsons before as a kid, though I don't think it's a show I actually paid much attention to. I mean, obviously when this aired, this was like 10 years before I was born, but I probably saw it in repeats, and maybe when I was playing with my little Star Wars figures or something like that. It's the kind of show I just have on in the background. It's like, oh, the Jetsons, whatever, put it on. So if you were to ask me, tell me the plot of any episode of the Jetsons, I would not be able to tell you what the plot of any episode of the Jetsons was. But I knew it was a family. I knew it was set in the future. I remember the start of the song. Actually, I thought I remembered the start of the song. I had it wrong, though, because I thought it went straight from George Jetson to Jane, his wife. But apparently that was incorrect. I didn't remember the names of the kids. I didn't remember the robot at all. So, I mean, there was not much except the general overall setting. And I remember it being kind of a contrast to the Flintstones. I remember the Jetsons was the future one and the Flintstones was the Stone Age one. So I remember they were kind of related in some general sense. So that's what I expected. I expected to see something like that. I expected it to be funny, definitely not crude, because I mean shows weren't really crude back in that day.
Boring.
Sorry. But just, I hoped it would be entertaining, but I wasn't really sure, since I didn't actually have memory of whether I thought it was funny or whether it was just it was something that was on when I played with Darth Vader fighting Luke,
All right. Abigail, what about you? What did you expect before you watched this first episode, if anything?
Yeah, similarly, I couldn't remember ever having seen an episode of the Jetsons. I'd seen Flintstones maybe, and I knew it was the Flintstones of the future. I knew the flying cars. I knew that was a big thing in the Jetsons. I thought they might state a specific year, like this was in the year 2000, and I was going to be all offended. Where's my flying car in the year 2000? But they didn't. So I expected a year to be stated, and that wasn't. I knew about the theme song too, so that has, I think, permeated society. And yeah, I knew it was a cartoon. I kind of expected it to be for little kids. So that was something that I got to think about as I watched it.
Ooh, I like that tease. What about you, Kelly? What did you
Um,
expect?
well, I did not if I watched it when I was little, I don't remember, but I do remember it being on. So I do remember the song. And then I do remember the noise that the cars make, the whatever. And so I expected some futuristic, things that, since I haven't seen it, if ever, I haven't seen it enough to develop a memory off of it. I was expecting to see some, you know, things that might have actually came to pass, or if you're like, you went off in the wrong direction. So I was looking forward to that.
All right. Well, I'll tell all y'all what I expected, if anything. I did see
Please.
this show a bunch of times when I was a kid. I don't know if a bunch of times is 5 or 100, but it was like I was the kind of kid that just wanted to have cartoons on, after school or whatever, when it was party time, before the parents come home, you just put on cartoons and party. And I remember this was definitely one of the lower tier cartoons where I was like, oh man, it's either this or like Divorce Court. So I
Oh
guess,
man.
it's kind of like when you're hungry and you don't have anything good, you're like, I guess I'll eat like cardboard or whatever. And so, it would be on more out of desperation for cartoons. I don't think I actually liked the show. In fact, I feel like I kind of was a little annoyed by it for not being good because I like Transformers and G.I. Joe and explosions and death and violence and aliens and sci-fi stuff. And this was kind of, yeah, like the answer to the Flintstones kind of thing. And I remember it's like a show that like my parents and my parents' generation watched too. So I kind of wanted to like it because they're like, oh, the Jetsons. I watched that when I was a kid. And I'm like, oh, I'll watch it too, Dad. I'm like, this show sucks. But I would never tell them that. Um, but all that being said, I did expect that I would still enjoy it. I expected like, hey, it's science fiction. It's 1962 science fiction. I remember the characters. I don't know if I had all the names down, but I, kind of knew what to expect. I don't really remember episodes or anything too specific. I think that dog's name is AstroTurf or something. So that's where I was with it. I was expecting that it would be enjoyable, that I'd be like, hey, we're less snobby about cartoons nowadays. Let's enjoy it. But that's what we all expected. Pencils down, everybody. Lock in your final votes. It's about time to know what we actually got upon viewing this first episode. What do you got for us,
Actually, I have a
Dr.
question
Noor?
for you, Ryan. First, what were you playing? You said like it was party time. What were you playing while you watched it? Do you have like Star Wars action figures or GI Joe figures or He-Man figures?
Yeah, or maybe I was breaking stuff or lighting things on fire or doing something stupid.
Burning
Oh,
ants.
Yeah.
it's interesting. We got two answers of, the show was on in the background when I was playing with my Star Wars figures, playing with my GI Joe figures. So interesting parallelism there.
Yeah,
Very
it is
close.
interesting parallel. The show I always had the disappointment part of it is when I click it on, it'd be Davy and Goliath. I'm like, oh, put it on, like whatever, it's there, I guess. Better than nothing in the background. Anyway, back to the Jetsons. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. I have to admit, because I went in a little bit like, oh shoot, is this going to be like terrible? But no, I was pleasantly surprised. It was good. I mean, for the time, and I'll come back to some specifics in there. So for the time, this is a like 1962 era show. I mean, there were many points where I laughed. I was able to follow it just fine. It seemed like a good family show. I could imagine like, the stereotypical family sitting around watching TV and like everybody feeling like they got something out of it. Like there were some things that seemed to be aimed at sort of the older people, like the parents or big kids. Some things that were just more fun for the little kids, like just bouncing the ball around. Yeah, overall, I found it good, especially for like a 30-minute cartoon show. I thought it was pretty good. It is of the era of the 60s. I mean, it's, obviously like, we've gotten better. We haven't cured, but we're better on sexism there. But like the fact that even in the intro song, Jane is sent off to go like shopping. I'm like, okay, really? That's the goal there. That's a product of the time in that sense. There were a couple of things that were just a little bit funny. Like one thing that was emphasized, the ages were emphasized multiple times. Now, the mom is 33, the daughter's 15, mom's 33, daughter's 15. I'm like, okay, so she was 18 when she had the kid. It's not outside the range. It's a little young, but I mean, people have kids when they're 18. It's not outside the range. But yeah, overall, it was entertaining. So I'll stop there and give other people a chance to weigh in.
The kid was probably conceived at 17.
Yeah. Depends on how close
Right.
to.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Abigail, what about you? What did you actually get upon viewing this first episode?
Yeah. I could talk about what I liked about it to start. I loved the colors were the thing that really jumped out at me, just how colorful and how stylized and how beautiful the animation was. That was my favorite thing about the show. And I was reading a little bit of the history that this was one of the first programs that was actually broadcast in color. Although at the time, a lot of the TVs couldn't actually receive the color. So only a few people saw it as it was originally meant to be seen. But I thought it was just wonderful. I wish we still made cartoons that look like that today. Of course, we can talk a lot about the technologies that we saw, which I think is a big thing about what did they get right? What did they get wrong about the future? But I got to say, as Muhammad was saying, it's a show of its time, and these gender roles and the comments that the women in the show were making, I just couldn't get past that. It started with the opening credits when they showed the wife, how they introduced Jane taking her husband's money and going to the shopping mall. I was like, oh, I can't get past this. And it just got worse and worse. So that just left a tough taste in my mouth. So, I appreciate it for what it was of the time and how it maybe shaped our vision of the future and shaped what TV could be in terms of the mechanics of it all. But it was tough for me with the non-futuristic version of women and their place in the household.
Mm-hmm. It looks cool. Your background makes it look like you're actually in one of those homes and we're just seeing out your back window.
Out the window. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see these floating buildings and it looks like it's, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to go to LAX or unfortunately had to go through LAX, my least favorite place in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But there's a building in the middle of the airport I think it's called the Theme Building, but it is built in the exact same architectural style of these kind of beautiful swooping arches. It's very cool. And so seeing that kind of in the TV show in the Jetsons, it was around the same time. I love that. I thought it was really neat.
Yep. All right, Kelly and Park, what did you actually get?
So what I actually got was I had no idea there would be laughing in the background, like a laugh track, or live audience. I don't know which one it, really was. All of a sudden I thought it was like the first time it laughed, I thought it was like a TV show they had on. And then they kept laughing. And I was like, well, that's not a place that the TV would be on. What's going on here? And then come to find out, yeah, it's like they little family. Let's make another joke. Yeah. I also got, for me, it wasn't even the opening scene that really got. There's a couple other, I'm trying to think of, I should have wrote it down, but a couple other things like moments. Blanche, the cleaning whatever before
Robot.
They got Rosie, whatever. And he said something like, "It's got to go in her butt where it belongs." And I was like,
the engine.
I was like,
that was weird. Yeah,
it was a weird one.
That's a car thing because VW Bugs had their engines in the back and their trunk was in the front. And so I think back then that was like a whole big to do. And so that's why some people would get mad and say, the engine's supposed to be, in the front, not in the back, or in the back, not in the front. Anyway.
Did he say back or did he say butt?
I think he said rear.
Yeah,
rear. Okay.
It was like rear, I don't know. It's just the way he said it was like where it belongs. And I was like, and if it was an educational, joke or historical one, I was like, that one went over my head. That's okay. But yeah, no, it was, I will say it was I will piggyback that it was a good show for its time. It was that, I bet it was so cool to see for the first time for everybody, like on color, blah, blah, blah. I did do like that. I did minimal research, but I do know that George Jetson was born in the year 2022. So
Right.
Ah, okay. So we
Oh,
got about 30 years before we're all in
yeah.
floating houses and flying cars.
yeah.
Well, no,
So
unless he was the same age as Jane, then we have a lot
yeah.
less.
Oh yeah, right. Well, so I know that it took place in 2062. So he was
Oh,
40 years old, and I don't know how Jane. I don't know. That's all I
He
got.
was
That's what Mark got.
33.
She was 33. Well, wasn't Judy in high school?
she was 15. She
Yes.
said her age.
Yeah. Multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
They really wanted the kids to know the age. Adults usually
Yeah.
you catch the age, but then kids, they're like, we got to tell them 15 times like it matters. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Please continue, Kelly.
Well, anyways, no, it's just it was definitely a historical piece, with all of its social whatever. But yeah, it was an interesting watch, and I'm gonna leave that one there.
Mm-hmm. All right, everybody.
That was non-committal last
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. He wants to get up into this thing. I have really mixed emotions about this. Not powerful emotions, but honestly, midway through it, I was like, okay, we get it. You're from the future. This is like every single joke was, we're from the future. This is how funny it is in the future. Isn't the future like everything? I was like, okay, we got to move forward. We got to get past this. You need more jokes or different things, It was just kind of exhausting to me for some reason. But that's, looking at it through the lens of today, then I'm just kind of like, whatever. And I was even a little bit like I said, exhausted by it. I was like, enough. We get the gimmick, we get the theme. But when I look at it as a show from 1962, which is how things really should be judged, honestly, because when in 1962 they can't predict what people are going to think 62 years later. I think it was pretty good for its time. It must have been, especially finding out that it was one of the first things in color. It was like, oh, this is the new wave of the future, everybody. A futuristic show on futuristic TVs. Oh, boy, this is it, you guys. We did it, everybody. I think it was probably pretty good for its time, which is why it survived so long and why, older people remember this show so well and talk about it. And the Flintstones. WTF, the Flintstones, everybody. That's one we haven't done yet. So I feel like I need to talk this one out because Ryan didn't, the same as Kid Ryan, honestly. I was just kind of like, oh, this is.
So can I ask a question to you? It was very futuristic and a lot of the gags were, oh, the button's not working or whatever. But the basic premise was such a standard 1960s sitcom premise, the boss is coming home for dinner, got to make the dinner, the wife is unhappy around the home. What did you think about that, very mundane issues that they were dealing with and the juxtaposition of this futuristic to you or?
Excellent question. And I'll tell you, actually, when George Jetson was visiting his boss on his little seat, I don't know how they're all in shape, by the way, if they don't do anything but sit and push buttons. They don't even walk. They
push it 5 times. It's not like
Jane was complaining about her figure in one of the lines too. And I'm like, what? Anyway.
So when George was talking to his boss, Cosmo Spacely, and Cosmo was like, excellent, I'll be right over there. I was like, bro, I'm watching I Love Lucy. George Jefferson is like I Love Lucy, but so is Jane. They're both kind of like, and I guess maybe that is the standard formula for the 50s and 60s, which is just kind of family life, oops, we got into a mix up. The boss is coming. We better fix it. I'm like, I feel like I actually saw that episode of I Love Lucy, so that's what it felt like. It felt like it was just this very formulaic. And then they're just like, it's the standard sitcom, but it's animated, and it's future, right? That's what it kind of seemed like.
Wasn't this also like this is our perspective now of what shows were then? Because in WandaVision, in the first episode, I think that was the plot too, which was the one
You're
that was
so
supposed to be
right.
basically back there. That was basically that same plot.
And I hated that episode too. Yeah. Did you guys get any feelings of it reminding you of something other than the Flintstones? Did it remind you of any old shows or anything from back in the day?
It reminded me of actually, I just got to put it out there. I myself never watched Disney, or like not Disney, Cartoon Network. I hated Cartoon Network. I was a Nickelodeon gal through and through, and this show would never be on Nickelodeon for good reason. And I will say, how do you say, what is like something that's just because you may not be interested in it doesn't mean it's not interesting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think like, so this show was a good like I feel like is good for its time, and yeah, like I said, for if you want to put it, the judgment on the 60s. However, I when you say exhausting, it was exhausting, and there were certain parts that were just like cringeworthy, and I was just like twitching. And then finally I started doing that thing where you pause the show to see how many more minutes are left, and then but go George. So I mean, it just reminded me of like when I was little and went like, you know how you look in the pan, like I would rather not eat anything than cardboard. So I mean, I probably would have gone with the Judge Judy, but I mean, I don't know.
Would you have gone with Davy and Goliath though?
Yeah, Dave. I mean, maybe Davy and Goliath.
Which one's
But
Davy and Goliath?
It was a claymation show. It was like hyper religious too. Yeah.
No, claymation.
Yeah. Well,
Unless it's Jason and the Argonauts.
Right. This just wouldn't have been an option for me because this would be on, the Cartoon Network channel, and that's just that fridge wasn't in my house. So, but anyways, as I say, I just say that, it was good for its time,
Did you guys notice, especially you, Abigail, did you notice all of the things they got right? Like FaceTime.
Yeah, I was trying to keep a running list. There's quite a few things actually that they've gotten correct, and I'm really interested to know if shows like the Jetsons actually inspired the technology to be developed. But obviously, we don't have flying cars, we don't have floating cities, but some of the technologies they used. I mean, the biggest one was the video phone calls, which we do all the time now with our FaceTimes or our Zooms and things like that. So I thought that was great and not out of place at all. There was an electric toothbrusher where he said, I'm brushing my teeth. And, the design they had was doing it all for him. But, we have our electric toothbrush, your Sonicare or your Quip or whatever. That's a technology that exists now to help you brush your teeth better. What else was there? They talked about a 3D TV that she was working out to, which I couldn't actually tell how it was 3D, but it was this flat screen TV.
Flat screen,
that looked like a really modern TV.
Yeah, there was
so
also
actually like pretty good.
The automatic vacuums. We got those little Roombas that go around, right? That thing shot out.
I do have a question for the public. How do you get a traffic jam in space? I'm asking for a friend here.
Here's my answer to this, and I'm probably the least qualified person to answer this question. So here I go. We do have flying cars. They're not commercially available, thank goodness. But we do know that people can make these things. They sound expensive and dangerous. But what I've always thought is the reason we can't actually turn it into a thing is the logistics of, do they just have carte blanche to fly anywhere? Because if your car runs out of gas, or if your car runs out of battery, or if your car's engine blows up, you pull over. But if you're 100 feet in the air, you land in someone's kitchen and you kill them. And so we can't have flying cars unless we create designated freeways, just like with regular cars, so that if they do die, they just fall onto a little net or something like that, right? And so that being said, you can have traffic jams in that case if things have to be in a designated line. They're not like jetpacks where you can just go whoops, because I've thought about this way too much, but I feel like how else are we going to make this a safe situation? We can't just let people fly anywhere they want. They're going to kill us all.
But here's the
I
thing.
love that answer. It
Yeah.
makes sense. And you're thinking like a spacecraft engineer. So that's
But what
they're
about
always thinking about what if this breaks? What are we going to do to compensate?
But it's dangerous though. But you're saying though, Ryan, that like the idea is that it would fly itself, right? Or no, you would fly it.
Either way.
Because if you fly it, it's still too dangerous. But if the bot flies it, it knows like when to stop and start, blah blah. Hence, lot less traffic because these cars know what they're doing because they're doing automatic.
More regulated. Yeah, that's true.
Fast, they know. But if you do manual, I could see where it would be a traffic jam. But at the same time, they're going to crash. Or unless these little hovers it's kind of like our cars even today, where like if you get to a certain point, it just won't let you move forward. Maybe, hence traffic. Felt like the 405 to me. That's all I'm saying.
Now that's funny, everybody.
Laugh track, cue the laugh track.
I know, we need a laugh track so bad right now. That was so out of place in a cartoon. I bet the Flintstones had one too. Mohammed, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think all excellent points. I don't know about the last point that you just made, Kelly. I was thinking about that. Would it be better if it was computer or not? I mean, I guess if it was today, no. Because I mean, like right now, computer controlled cars still aren't. I mean, they're okay, but they're not great.
No.
So, but I guess if it is future, then maybe at that point we've gotten our AIs to work better on those sorts of things or something like that. So, and this is future. So I guess in that sense you are right.
Safety first, always, right? That's it.
What's that?
Safety first.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you that the other thing that I learned was, and I can't vouch for it because I didn't watch the episode, but the last episode of the Flintstones, I guess there's like a little point where the Jetsons make an appearance, like not an appearance, like
that's fun.
What's it? Where they a cameo? Will they just like beep through there for a second? Apparently, that happens in the last episode of the series of Flintstone.
Wow.
So
look forward to that, everybody.
WTF last episode of Flintstone.
Hey, I had a couple nitpicks, and as you guys may have guessed, they're sports-related nitpicks. One is that I don't care how good of a robot you are, you can't throw a football that acts like a boomerang. That's not that doesn't work. That's not a thing.
That was weird.
It does not exist.
Okay, but what if the robot had some kind of magnet in her hand and she like
then the football would need a magnet.
I don't know. Rosie could do anything. She was extraordinarily competent.
She inserted iron into it.
She took tapes and made them into the news or into actual words within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Then the other one, the other nitpick, and nice try, guys. I still don't like that boomerang football.
Gotta defend Rosie. Loved Rosie.
The other one is when the little dork says, what's his name? Elroy, the little buddy, I mean, says, hey, can you show me your hook shot? Or whatever he says. My immediate thought was, I'll bet you anything it's not going to be an actual hook shot. It's going to be something else. And it was not a hook shot. She did like a softball pitch.
He'll find out.
I'm like, that's not a hook shot. Everybody, a hook shot is like this. You hook. So I was very angry. I was like, don't call it a hook shot if it's not a hook shot. Just say whatever. Anyway, I was like, what in the 60s? They didn't know what a basketball. I don't know.
With the football, though, didn't she like wind up with the football too?
I don't know. It's sacrilege.
A little bit. It's okay.
Maybe sports rules are different in the future. Maybe that's what the show is trying to tell us, that they've just evolved.
That's true.
To be this different genre.
And language evolves too. Okay, that works.
Speaking of language, did you catch that she was learning Esperanto? I was like, oh, I haven't really mentioned that in a long time.
Yeah, what is that?
It's an artificial language that was made up. It was supposed to be an alternate language. I think you can still get things for it, like on what are those? Yeah,
I've
It
heard
was
of that.
supposed to be the universal language, and like
It's
everyone
supposed to
was
be.
gonna learn it, but
And it kind of
clearly
had
that
Latin roots or something, if I remember correctly.
Maybe I don't remember the details on it, but you can still get it on like Duolingo or things like that too. So it's still like around, but it's. I remember hearing about it a lot in the 70s, but I don't remember hearing it anything recently about it, aside from like Duolingo having it.
Okay. I like the model from France. That was fun. Agnes was the British model of
Do you like the
robot.
don't pick fights with Russian boys?
Yeah, so they just I wanted to see a transporter. I want to know how they go to these different places and see if because remember, this was a few years before Star Trek. So it's possible Star Trek got some ideas from the Jetsons. Possible.
One inconsistency in that regard, I thought it was funny that it was fine to go to Acapulco, but it was not fine to go to Hawaii. But Elroy was going all the way to Russia. I was like, wait a minute, where are they? Like,
And
are they in Japan?
The mom
where
said
are they?
it's too cold to go swimming in Hawaii, but it's okay to swim in Acapulco. I'm like, it doesn't matter what time of year, it's not going to be cold in Hawaii.
I thought it was getting back in time. I didn't know it was the temperature. Was that what it was?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe I don't remember.
I don't know. And the space calculus. All right. Look, everybody. Muhammad knows what time it is. Dr. Abigail Fraeman, it's time to talk about you for a moment. You've just recently, oh, by the way, before we do that, this is what you were talking about. The LAX theme building, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you brought it up. See?
Yeah.
I think the Jetsons took from that. Yeah, love the building. Although there was a Jimmy Fallon show once where he said, "Thank you for looking like the world's largest pizza topper." So I also think about that. You know, those little plastic things they put on pizzas to keep the box from collapsing in. So it's either like the awesome, stylish, futuristic, iconic building, or the extra large pizza topper.
I don't know how to segue that, but we'll just do it.
So more about me.
Yes. You are a Mars scientist. That's amazing. I don't know how many scientists we have from Mars, but you're one of them, and it's really cool. You just recently had a pretty cool anniversary. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I'm not actually from Mars, but I spend my days studying Mars and exploring Mars, working on the Mars rovers that are operating now, helping to figure out where to drive them and what data to collect to help us learn more about the planet, look for life, things like that. But just a couple weeks ago, we celebrated 20 years of having a continuous rover presence on the surface of Mars, which is blows my mind. It was the 20-year landing anniversary of the Spirit and Opportunity Mars rovers, which landed back in January of 2004. And just those missions lasted longer than we thought they would, and we sent new rovers since then. And so NASA has had a continuous presence on the surface of Mars every day for the last 20 years. So I think we're already sort of living in the Jetsons future. But if you don't mind, I'll put in a plug. If you're interested
Please.
in learning more about the Spirit and the Opportunity rover mission, and if you want to learn a little bit more about me, there's a wonderful documentary on Amazon Prime that came out about a year ago called Goodnight Oppy, OPPY, which is the nickname we had for the Opportunity Mars rover. And it tells the story of the mission, what it was looking for, what it took to get to the surface of Mars.
I watched it. I've already
You
watched
did?
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love space, and I love
Oh.
my brother is super into it too. And so whenever I lived in LA, I always went to the Griffith Observatory, and I would go to it like once a month. Like, I was creepy. Like, yeah, I was always there. And I watched Good Night, and I just
Yeah, it's way more emotional than you think it's going to be.
emotional. It's a very movie. I 10 out of 10 recommend. So
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, you should watch it.
Muhammad and I need to catch up. Have you seen it, Muhammad?
I have not seen it, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's the human side of exploration is really what it focuses on.
Yeah.
So, and you'll learn my origin story if you watch it.
That's
Do you
awesome.
ever, Abigail, do a little personification with your, let's call them droids? I don't know, what are they? Drones, but rovers. Do you like give them little personalities? Like, you're giving them a cute name like Oppie, or do you ever say like, oh, Curiosity is a little more shy than Oppie or anything like
Oh
that?
no, she's Curio. We call her Curio. Yes, and of course, the Rovers definitely have personalities. Appy was Little Miss Perfect. Spirit Rover, who was her twin, was a little bit more hardworking, blue collar. Always trying to be like, but I can do this too. Yeah, and the rover that I work on now is named Curiosity or Curio, and she's just a superstar. I think doing amazing things, just finding the most beautiful vistas. She's a real photographer. All the photos from Curiosity are just spectacular.
Wow. So when you see fictional representations of Mars, like on The Martian or on For All Mankind or any of these other things, like are there ones that you were like, oh my gosh, that's spot on, like, oh my God, that's crazy?
Yeah, I love The Martian. Love, love, love. There are things about it that you're like, okay, I'm going to suspend my scientific knowledge just for the purpose of the narrative. And they're driving around, you're like, those aren't Mars rocks. I can tell they're this kind of rock or whatever. But I love it. I think it's great. And I think the more realistic the movies try to be, the better. Haven't seen For All Mankind yet, but it's on my list. My dad is watching it and he was so excited. He's like, Abby, they're going to Mars. You have to watch it. So that's in my queue.
Nice. And everybody, you can follow Abby on Twitter. That's at Abby Frey, ABBYFRAE, to follow all of her hijinks on Mars with the rest of the Martians.
It's called X now, right? Or is it still Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
It says twitter.com, so I call it twitter.com.
Oh.
That's
It sometimes redirects to x.com now too.
Interesting.
too much work. All right. Mohammed knows where we're going from here, right,
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Noor?
Time for the karate chop to show it's the bottom line. Because I'm doing a line on the bottom. So it's the bottom line. There's no twos. It's just bottom line.
Dr. Noor misspoke. It's actually the terrible twos, the final two questions of the show. And they go a little something like this. Question number 1, Dr. Mohammed Noor, on a scale of 1 to 10, be brutally honest, what would you give the first episode of the Jetsons?
I would give it, I'm scaling for the fact it's from 1962. I'm assuming like I would give it a radically different score if this was a series that was released like this year or even in the last 10 or 20 years. But given the 1962 aspect, I'm giving them a break on a lot of those elements. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Ooh.
I heard one of you all got it right. I feel it was either Kelly or it was Abby. Yeah, good job.
She knows too much.
She's smart.
What about you, Abigail? What would you give this on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I think despite my nails on the chalkboard with the of the time roles of the genders, I loved how stylized it was. It was a beautiful cartoon to watch. I loved Rosie. She was crazy cool. It's all about Rosie. I'm going to put it right in the middle. I think, Ryan, as you predicted, I was around a 6-ish for my numerical rating.
All right. Very good. And a lot of people think that a 5 is in the middle on a scale of 1 to 10, but actually it's closer. It's a 5.5 is really the middle. So rounding up that's a 6. Because sometimes we'll do that. We'll say like, I'm just going to go right in the middle and give it a 5. And we're like, well, technically,
we don't keep zeros.
Yeah, but maybe we should.
Slightly above average, but not much.
We've considered saying 0 to 10, but that's just, can something be a 0?
We would have to like not
totally
exist.
Unwatchable, I guess.
Yeah, that's like an incomplete, right? I don't know.
You turn off the TV before the show ends. I used to watch TV shows before they came out, like as a side gig in LA, and you always rate it the whole episode 1 to 10. You can go back and forth on the dial, but you can only press the red button once, and that is if you would turn the channel off.
What does the red button do? Kelly, what would you give this on a scale of 1 to 10?
So Okay, so I'll say what I'm gonna do is, for me, I'm gonna go with the angle of, I understand it's from the 60s. I also, on the flip side, wasn't really all that, like, cringed, like, super cringed about, like, the jokes. I was like, "Okay." Um, that being said, I didn't laugh at anything. And, and, I would say I'm rating off of how I felt about it as a child and how I feel about it now. So I would give it a good solid 3.
Wow.
I mean,
That is
3.5.
good.
Yeah, I just, for me, it
Fair
was a
enough.
very unenjoy I mean, I love this podcast, but it's just unenjoyable show, but, like, again, I don't think it was any direction of time or jokes or anything. It's just that's how I feel about the show just in general, and I'm
Fair
not even
enough.
saying again that it's a bad show, because for its time, it was actually really good, but if we're doing Kelly's personal opinion,
Mhm.
yeah, so
Fair enough. Fair enough. Totally fair.
Right.
I'm more of a
Well, I've been very torn about this because when it ended, I wanted to give it a 4 or lower, to punish it. Um, but I'm already hypercritical about old shows. I'm always like, oh, this is dumb. This is old, whatever. Whereas realistically, if I look at it through the lens of 1962, this was probably people are like, oh, the writing is brilliant. And they added the laugh track to a cartoon. Brilliant. All this stuff that I'm like, what is this barf story? Uh, you know, so I feel like I got to kind of average these out. I wanted to give it a 4 when I watched it, but I don't think that's fair of me. So I'm going to give it a 6. Because I'm just going to average those out because I'm non-committal. I can't decide which direction I want to go with it. So I'm giving it a 6. Probably deserves way higher, uh, objectively. But anyway, we're not objective. We're human, except for Abigail. So question number, you're a Martian.
Hi.
You're,
smart. A smart
A Martian. There you go.
all right.
Martian.
So question number 2 is, for the purposes of this podcast, we all had to watch the first episode of The Jetsons. But now that the podcast is over and we're free to move about the internet, Dr. Muhammad Noor, would you, of your own volition, watch the second episode?
I would not. Much as I was fine with this first one. I don't see a situation where I'm like, I turn on TV. Oh, look, let me go find the Jetsons. Now, if it was on, if somebody else wanted to watch it, I wouldn't insist on changing the channel. I'd sit down and probably even enjoy it. But I don't see a situation where I'm going to seek it out, which is the way I see that question. So no.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Abigail?
Yeah, similar. I'd love to see more Rosie, but other than that, not much else. I'm probably going to pass on future episodes.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, give us a twist.
Oh yeah,
Well,
I'll do a twist.
I
Blood pressure.
love to not watch another episode. I probably will go to almost all lengths to make sure that show isn't on my television.
Wow. Okay.
But that's okay. Go Jane. But yep, I don't think to my own volition will I ever keep it on in the background at all costs. If Nina likes it, we're gonna have to change out Nina. I'm just kidding, but really. So
This is your
yeah.
daughter?
Yeah, my 2-year-old. She's still on
She's only 2. You're
Cocomelon.
not attached yet. Whatever.
It's Rachel, but this show will not be present as an option on our screen time.
What if she loves it? What if when she's like 5, she's like, oh my God, I want to be Rosie. This is so much fun. Life is amazing.
I that actually gave me like genuine like slight anxiety.
Oh my God.
Just I don't know, guys. I don't know. Maybe I'm just medieval times junkie, but
Mm-hmm.
nope.
All right.
Can't.
Well, spoiler, it's a no from me too. I'm not going to seek this show out. I'll be anywhere between indifferent or eye rolly if it happens to be on at some point, because I'm kind of snobby, so I might be like, this show's not even that funny, and they don't even get like everything right about the future. They're so stupid. But it's not that bad, I guess. But no, it's a no for me for sure. No thanks. No thanks. But I'm glad it exists because I feel like it formed the minds of a lot of pre-scientists, a lot of proto-scientists, a lot of scientists to be, possibly. So that's it for us, everybody. We sure have had a lot of fun, and we'd appreciate if you like this video and subscribe and do all that kind of stuff. And give us your suggestions in the comments below, of course. Super important. What I'm
Use your
trying to
workout
say, yeah,
You
right.
know.
Do your finger workouts like Jane did.
I think we
What I'm
should start
trying to
after
say
5 of
is
those.
this podcast was futuristic.
This podcast brought together a diversity of perspectives.
This podcast was extremely critical.
This podcast was celestial fun.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Now I feel bad. We're so mean to the Jetsons, and they're so nice. They're just trying to make the world a better place, probably. Anyway, everybody, please remember what Mr. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg always likes to say, as we'll see you next time.
I don't think that's what he says that too. Don't forget to be an organ donor, and don't forget to watch the first of things.
All right, everybody, here's the fun part. Freeze frame like Rosie. Oh, football Rosie.